Hello, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Tired, huh? You're still 16? Well, is there something you guys want to talk about before we go home?
Yeah.
It could be anything. Yes, Danielle?
Right. The question from a week ago, which I withheld, the one that I used to today, since apparently so much of our life is directed by how we what happens to it's like how much control do we really have over our bigger life on an everyday basis? How much do our choices affect that? Besides the consequences that come from outside.
That's just too much for a Wednesday morning. Can I, and then, okay. Kim comes to this class exhausted all the time. You okay?
Yeah.
Should I just leave you alone today?
You're right. That's true.
Monique. Well, let me do it a different way. What do you think is the most important thing in life? Well, at different stages, priorities change. Why are you in school?
First part, I would say direction is the most important part. Having the place you're trying to get to.
So the short answer to your very convoluted response would be, you're really here for power. This is what you want. You want power. There is a good amount of power to be gained in going to school and graduating. There is more power to be gained when you enter a four-year school. And depending on what four-year school you're accepted to, if you go to East Bay, it's not bad. If you go to Stanford, it's like Jeremiah's hammer in the Old Testament. You know, whatever door or gate you knock, it'll just break down and just walk through. So, should you desire to apply to both Stanford and East Bay, what you want to be mindful of is that when it comes to Stanford, you need to really do well on paper. Write your letter really, really well, plagiarize, inflate, it doesn't really matter how you want to lie, but lie well without getting caught. Okay, that in itself, the ability to be cunning, to be clever, to be manipulative, to be coercive, that in itself requires a tremendous amount of intelligence. That intelligence gives you power. That power gives you the ability to write beautiful personal statements. And then you will dupe the committee that's reading your letter. Then you'll be accepted to Stanford or Princeton or Yale. And then depending on the sort of major you want to pursue, if it's impacted, if it's not so impacted, if you want to live in the Bay Area and you realize that you happen to be really good at, say, computer science, the field of technology. You know, OpenAI just opened up, Google is there, Yahoo is there, all these high-powered places are there. So you say, you know what, I like history, I also like computer science, right? And then you say, I don't want to be a Judas. What benefit is there for man to gain the whole world but lose his own soul? You're in love with history, but you also are intelligent enough to understand the power of money and the sort of security it brings in. So you double major, okay? You do in history, let's say you minor in history, but you major in computer science. Eventually what you'll have, hopefully, at the end of say 5 or 6 or 10 years of your academic career is you'll have a master's degree from Stanford, and now it comes time to apply. On paper, you have a tremendous amount of power because most of your competition, they're all from East Bay. You're the only one that stands out. Why? You've been to Yale or Harvard. The next thing that you have to demonstrate to the committee is that when you go there, you're very mindful of your skin color. And you're very mindful of what this country has done to people like you. Then you say, okay, I'm going to this company. There's a good chance that 9 of the committee members are going to be Caucasians, Caucasoids, i.e. white. Okay, 1 will be maybe Asian, maybe Indian, maybe Middle Eastern, maybe African American. Okay, you study that really well. And then you say, okay, do I want to behave in a way that will remove power from me or give me more power to dominate the psyche of the community? Okay, so what kind of language you want to use, how you want to enunciate your words, okay, how you want to present yourself. And you realize that from the moment you are born until the time that you and I die, we are only seekers after power. Now you can assume this power intelligently or callously. I mean, there's a reason why we talk about James Baldwin to this day, or Malcolm X or Jesus Christ. They have a tremendous amount of intellectual and spiritual power. It doesn't matter what I say to them. That's not going to change who and what they are. You know, I don't have any power to push buttons. They know who and what they are, okay? Now, the amount of power you have, I can go to a car lot with $2,000 in my pocket. My options are going to be very, very limited. And whatever car I buy will eventually break down after 2-3 weeks. If on the other hand, I go in there with $25,000, $30,000 in my pocket, I'm going to buy a brand new car. Okay, it's going to be under warranty for about 5 years. And new cars usually, if you're not unlucky, okay, they'll last you for about 15 good years. Then they'll start breaking down. Okay. Now, there are a couple of aspects to being a human being. You need power in your physical body. In other words, you need health. You don't need to come to class and have a toothache because you're going to lose focus. Okay? You still have a lot of dreams and lots of hopes, and you need to make sure that those dreams and hopes that you have remain protected. How? Eat well. Exercise. And I only say these things because I have spent some time abusing my body. I still do. And then I had a triple bypass. And then that coming close to death kind of tells me, listen, you're not invincible. Eat well. Exercise a little bit. Don't be a complete idiot every single day. Okay? So you need physical health only to protect your imaginations and your dreams. It's very, very important. Okay? And that's the first thing. Then you also know that you have a body. Okay, that body happens to be black. That blackness lives in America. There is a history to that. You need to be aware of that. If there is a police officer behind you, as it was behind me yesterday as I'm driving, okay, I don't know how they're connected to ICE. If they're connected to ICE, I don't know if the police officer is going to be having a good day or a bad day. If I look at the speed limit, the sign, it says 35. I go exactly 35. And I keep looking back because I want to see if the siren is going to come on. If I get pulled over, and if this guy's going to have a bad day, or if his dad was killed in the Middle East because of the war, okay, and if I look like a Middle Eastern guy, I'm going to be harassed. So I want to make sure that I don't lose what little sanity or power that I have. As long as you're aware of that, you walk very cautiously in the streets, and you know where to go. Okay? Then you have the intellectual aspect to you. How well do you think? And how well you think depends on how many books you've read, what people you hang out with, and how well you're able to think as well as to reflect. Okay? Then there is the emotional power. Do you have a lot of buttons that can get easily pushed? And when you're triggered, do you express yourself in a way that is disrespectful to you, to this place, and to me? Okay? And then there is, of course, spiritual power, which is much, much later in our lives. So the point I'm trying to make ultimately is the following. You need different kinds of power in different stages of your life, okay? And the more power you have, the more choices you have. You can't go to In-N-Out and say, I want a Whopper. It doesn't work. You can't go to In-N-Out and expect socks. That doesn't work. You look at the menu, you look at the money in your pocket, and then you make choices according to your desire palette, okay? The memories, I had a number 1, it was awful. Number 2, it was really, really good, okay? So that memory itself also limits your choices, but also tells you what choices will best serve you. Okay? If you go anywhere, okay, if you go into relationships, not having learned from your past mistakes, you enter a brand new relationship with a great amount of poverty. And with that poverty, you won't have very many choices. You will make the same mistakes. If on the other hand, you have learned from them, okay, now you have different windows to look through. Now you're able to see more things that you weren't able to see. That gives you power. Instead of waiting for 5 years to eventually call it quits, that 5 years of your youth trashed, now you can make the right choice after 2 weeks. Without power, you can't do anything in life. But none of us have infinite amounts of power. I'm not Donald Trump. You know, I'm not Bill Gates. I'm not Elon Musk. I'm a tiny little man with tiny little power. And I know what lines I can cross. I know what lines I can cross. It is true, there are days I'm just in a bad mood. I want to go home and just have a fight with my wife. But from past mistakes, I understand the consequences of harassing someone who is innocent and is at no fault. She's going to give me like a few bad days, and I don't want that. Having experienced that, good morning, sir. Yasmin. Yasamin. So so the point I suppose I'm trying to make ultimately is whatever you want to do, make sure you accumulate a lot of power in your life, a lot of power. The most important power you will ever have in your life is the ability to self-control, self-govern, and self-sustain. If you depend on me for happiness, there is nothing wrong with that. But just in case I die, just in case I find myself attracted to someone else and leave you, you will be plunged into poverty. That poverty removes hope from you, excitement. It'll push you into depression. And if you're not careful, that depression will be chronic. Chronic depression means you have a disease that now lives inside your soul. And it's going to be very, very tough to yank it out. Power. Just in case this class bores you, just in case I upset you, okay? Those negative emotions create poverty inside you. There's a good chance that if you're pushed around by those emotions, you may stand up, leave the class, drop the class. If you drop the class, your graduation from Laney will be delayed by about a semester, if not longer. And you as a black man in America, you don't want to take that risk. So the power that you need to have is tolerate my nonsense. Even if I smell bad, look bad, taste bad, whatever it is bad about me, you tolerate it for another 14 weeks. If you are able to have power over your emotions, and emotions always pass. They're not like this frozen sea of ice. Because they're always passing, I guarantee you, after 14 weeks, you say, man, I tolerated that piece of crap for about 14 weeks, but I have an A or a B or a C. I have 3 units. I'm an inch closer to graduation. Now, that is power.
Answers it, yeah.
That's good. That was good. That was a good analogy.
I assure you, if Tammy knew what she knows now 30 years ago,
Yes.
should be a very, very different human being.
Absolutely.
And all of us find ourselves in that particular limitation. And there isn't much you can do. Good luck. Joey. Caden. Anything? Yeah, tell me.
My question was, what are your thoughts about pursuing a job while on a job? So in other words, you're on a clock, you're on a computer, you're on company time, and you're actively looking for a job instead of working. Is that something that we should do? Is it considered stealing? Is it something we should do?
So your question may sound to some people like ridiculous or funny or uninteresting, but your question is really, really interesting and really, really profound, and let me explain. There was a guy some years ago around the, I think, early 19th century or so. His name is Karl Marx. Okay. Marx does something really, really interesting. Unlike someone like Plato, unlike someone like Jesus Christ, he came to argue that there is something wrong with the society that we've created. This society pushes you into despair. This society fragments you, cuts you up into 3 different parts, and makes sure that only one part is alive. Okay. So there's a part in you that desires sex. There's a part in you that desires food. And these are organic. This is what we call natural self. Okay. You need to kind of just be engaged. That's what your mind wants. Your mind doesn't enjoy being in the presence of boredom. We don't function like that. Okay. So there's a part of us that's very organic, just wants to move around and have a good time. Okay. There is a part of us that remains discontent, unhappy. It is true that you are married, but you long for love. It is true that you have lots of money in your pocket, but you want to live a life that's filled with inspiration, with creativity. And for Marx, that species self, a human being who lives through his or her soul. You know, if you're interested, for example, say in your culture, your heritage, let's say that you go on this journey to figure out your family tree, and you realize that many centuries ago, your great grandparents lived in a community in certain parts of Africa, let's just say Albatross community. And you say, you know what? I had a student in 2004. He had a friend whose name was CJ Anderson, who made it big in NFL. His name was Josiah. Josiah came to my class, man, he was just chiseled. He was a beautiful African-American man, he would just glow, you know. At a certain point, he said, I want to go back and figure out who I am. So he goes, I think he finds himself in Kenya, somewhere. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is there is a part of us that desires to live through our soul. Here's the problem, though. Our biggest obstacle is the alienated self. You have parents you don't like. You live in communities you don't enjoy. You take classes you don't enjoy. You have a job that you don't enjoy. The problem is you need all those things. You can't leave your husband or your wife because first, you've become addicted to them under abuse. Second, your body is addicted to their body. You have memories that haunt you. You can't leave them. Then you want to leave Home Depot or your job because you feel discontent, unhappy because they don't come out of your soul, but fear overcomes you. I have rent, I have kids to go to school, I have car payment, this payment, that payment, and that fear glues you to an environment that just is sucking the soul out of you. Every single day it ages you, plunges you into more depression and despair. Okay. Now your question is, I have a job, they're paying me by the hour or whatever, and I am stealing from the company because I'm looking for different jobs.
Company time.
Okay. Well, going back to our question about crime, well, there is a part of you that is unhappy about the job that you have. That's God given if you believe in that stuff. Okay? So that discontent, that unhappiness, which is intuitive, once in a while comes out and says, what are you doing? You may even be looking for a lower paying job. You just don't want to be there anymore, you know? So part of your issue is the fact that human beings are wired to pursue beauty and perfection. Okay? Now, one of the things you need to understand about, I've been here for 22 years now at Laney. If I was to go home today and not wake up tomorrow, is anything devastating going to happen to Laney? No. We're all replaceable.
Right.
We're all forgettable. None of us make that much of an impact on our immediate or not so immediate environment. Our presence or absence, especially our presence, really has no real significance. Okay? I mean, it's a very harsh way of looking at things, but it's true. You know, I've been here for 22 years. Do you know how many presidents have come and gone? How many deans have come and gone? And I don't remember a single one of them. They just don't matter. Okay. So the second thing you need to understand is the company that you work for doesn't really much care about you. You're used as a mule, as a donkey, as someone to exploit, to manipulate, to make some money from, to do some just, busy work. That's it. Now, your task, very much like, Danielle, your task is to be clever. Steal, cheat, lie, just don't get caught. Once you have the job, this new job, then walk away. What benefit is there for man or for Tammy to lose their soul, to gain the world but lose his soul? This company gives you money, fine. It gives you physical security, financial security, meaning, purpose, right? But at the end of the day, you go home, you look yourself in the mirror and you say, I've shortchanged myself. It is true that the company is very kind to you by giving you things that you need. It's also robbing you of your life. Which means what? You have every right to steal from them. Just make sure you don't get caught. You got to treat life realistically. It's great that some of you in this class may like me. Fine, not a problem. But at the end of the day, it's the grade that's most important, unless you're really, really infected with ideas. Hello, Abby. Just don't get caught. I don't mind you playing with your cell phone. Just don't get caught.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you lack even that intelligence, then you're just beyond help. What can you do? Nothing. Yes, Denasia. Am I saying your name right?
Yeah.
Denasia?
Yeah, today.
Okay.
Every time you mention Karl Marx, it makes me think of that book, Brave New World. And you mentioned something about how Karl Marx pointed out the idea that people try to mute certain parts of you and then make sure only one part lives and stuff like that. It makes me think of, it kind of just makes me start thinking of if certain parts of our human nature are burdened.
Are burdened?
Yeah. And I just want to know your thoughts on that. Like, whether that's like sexual desires or romantic desires or even like desire to pursue happiness like at the same time. And I know like generally, of course, like everything depends on point of view. Like if you look at things, but I just want to know your thoughts on things you're right.
What year were you born?
So,
Jesus Christ. It was just yesterday. So when 9/11 happened, I was in my office and all of a sudden the secretary comes, knocks on my door and says, they've been attacked. So, what do you mean? Turn on, the TV or your laptop or whatever. And these planes, hit the towers and they kind of come down. And so at 9 o'clock, I was teaching my philosophy class. So I walk into the classroom and students raise their hand. And the first set of questions that they ask is, do you know where Osama bin Laden is? Now, I'm not Arab. I'm Persian. Persians are far more superior than Arabs. And I don't say this because I'm biased. I say this because I'm biased. Now,
At least wait till I leave.
and so, and so I spent the next few weeks, trying to tell my students that, listen, I have no idea who this guy is. I've been in America for the past like 30, 40, 50, 60 years. But there is something really interesting about the question. I used to grow my beard long, all the way to my knee, every semester. Just kidding, but I used to grow my beard long. And when you grow your beard, especially as a Middle Eastern, in that political climate, people often mistake you as a terrorist. So when I would walk with my beard in Roseville, all these women would run to me, touch me to see if I have a dynamite or explosive device somewhere. And I would invite them to touch me more. That was just a bad joke. Now, and so as I'm walking the streets, I realize people are gazing at me in a very strange way. When I'm walking on campus, even my dean at certain point, who was Japanese, comes to me, Bill Suji, comes to me and says, Amir, listen, my parents were in camp during World War II, so if any of the students harass you, just come tell me, or any faculty member. I said, no, Bill, everything's fine for now. And the point I'm trying to make is this. I don't need to have committed any crimes against God, against humanity. Okay. My features resemble Osama. And because I have similar features, most Middle Easterners kind of look alike. Okay. Because we all have same features, I carry, without really knowing, a history above my head. I could be Jesus Christ, but because of that history, I am condemned. Okay, that history means what? And there is a long anthropological history to this. That around the 19th century, they divided the entire human race into 3 groups. Okay, my group, people of color, we are considered to be barbarians. Blacks are considered to be savages. And whites are considered to be civilized. Okay, and remember, you don't have to have committed any crimes. You could be a saint. But history defines you. Okay. Now, going back to Danielle's question, knowing that history and knowing that I am carrying that baggage, the question is, how do I want to speak and how do I want to act? Do I want to kind of encourage that history to continue? Or do I want to once in a while pause that history and force the onlooker to sit back, pause, reflect, think a little? Okay? We all condemned by certain things. I had athletes in my classes for about 10 years when I started laning. I disliked them profoundly. And of course, there is this new concept now. It's called student athletes, as if it makes you a different human being. Okay? Athletes are disrespectful. They refuse to do any work, and they're greedy for things they don't really deserve, like an A. Okay? And so because of that history, every time I get an athlete in my class, my mind takes me back to 10 years, like to the 10 years that I had athletes, where I experienced them not doing any work. And I would just look at them and say, listen, I'm not going to pass you in this class. Now, that guy may be a genius, but because of my history, I will condemn him. Now, you may, at the age of 10 or 11, have had a vision of Jesus Christ where you say, you know what, now I want to go into priesthood. Or I want to be a nun. Fine, that's great. There is a part of you as a physical animal that at a certain point says, you know, I really enjoy the touch of another human being on my skin. All of a sudden you have this tornado, the sexual force descending upon you. And you find yourself, well, you're pigeonholed. You have no idea what to do, where to go. How is it that for the past 10 years, all you want to do is sit and talk to Jesus, and now all you want to do is sit next to Hugh Hefner? You know, and you realize that we have no choice but to be housed in a very conflicting territory where there are parts of you that fights against other parts. There's a part of you that says, you know what, I need to name this class, I need to do work. There's another part that says, no, he doesn't really care. I don't really care for this stuff. And sloth comes forth. You know, so you're condemned by your own psyche. You're condemned by the world of advertisement. You're condemned by history. You're condemned by sexual orientation. This is a prison. The only way out of this prison is how much power do you have? If you have a lot of power, then you can pick and choose your prisons really, really well. You have to eat. If you have $2, you'll just eat chips. And they get cancer. If you have $50, then you can go to Zachary's and get yourself pizza and Caesar salad. You have to eat. You're condemned by that. The question is, how much power do you have? You can either eat junk food that'll get you sick, or food that's relatively healthy. You are a woman. It doesn't matter your sexual orientation. America is a soft porn culture. Now, you may, as a feminist, demand that men look at you with respect, or women look at you with respect. But you live in a culture where every single thing has been objectified. Now, the question is, how do you want to present yourself? You are an African American woman. There's a history. You're condemned by that. There isn't much you can do. You want me to look at you as a woman, as a human being? Train me as a man who happens to be biologically a visual animal. As a visual animal, I undress people. Teach me the way to look at you. Because for you to just, it's like me telling my 2-year-old, eat well. He just 2. He just came out of the womb. To demand things from people, and when you realize people don't have the things that you want from them, you say, okay, well, what do I want to do? Condemn them or teach them?
Or move on.
Or move on. If you have the power to move on and not just be around people, good for you. Dark. Are you taking notes?
Yes.
Good job.
I have a question about something Tammy brought up about the work thing and timeline. Should your environment affect you? Like if you're unhappy in your workplace or wherever you are, should you leave or should you try to overcome it?
Okay. So here's one of the problems I have with the American culture. There is this idea that when you turn 18, you're an adult, you're an individual, you have enough financial, intellectual, emotional power to leave your parents and go out there and make yourself a life. Okay. I'm sorry, what was your question?
Should you be affected by your environment?
Should you leave if you're
Should you
stick it
leave or
out?
should you just try to?
Going back to Danielle's question, I go back to what I said, which is, look, there's going to come a time where you're going to not like your parents very much. Your parents have concerns you don't really understand. As a young kid, a young woman, what you want to do is you want to grow your wings out and you want to fly. Parents, old people, our wings have been clipped. We have been contaminated. We are grounded. We walk. We don't fly. Are there days that I feel bad about walking and desiring to fly? Absolutely. I no longer have the ability to find my wings. And if I was able to look at and find my wings, I would know how to flap them so they could fly. Okay. So parents look at you and say, okay, he has a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I worry about that. Okay. Pregnancy, I worry about that. Dropping out of school, I worry about that. And the stories, the narratives, psychological narratives and emotional narratives that parents create for their kids, they are immense. I mean, parents create for themselves a Bible about their kids. We're going to do A, B, C, D to protect them. And then life happened. And they realize they really have no real power over their kids. Okay. Now, you may not like your parents. And you may want to leave. Now, you're 16. Do you have money? The answer is no. And a few $1,000s, they mean nothing. Okay. Should you leave, you need to get roommates. Some of them will be drug addicts, some will be alcoholics. You don't want to do that. Okay. Then you realize that you need to pay rent. And then you're going to drop out of school. And you're going to get a 9-to-5 job. You'll take a class or two, maybe every 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And then you'll end up here at the age of 35, 40, and they say A, B, C, D happened. If you have power to move away and support yourself healthily, use your power to your advantage. If on the other hand, you have this whimsical emotions and desires. I don't like my parents. I don't like my boyfriend. Well, you shouldn't really have a boyfriend, but that's besides the point. I don't like my parents. I want to leave. My response would be the following. You're here for one reason. You're 16. 16 years ago, two people got together, liked each other, screwed each other, okay? One got pregnant, and here you are. You are the outcome of sex. The moment you come out, now you become the outcome of love. Okay. You're forced up here. Okay. No one planned you, no one planned me. They're all accidents. If any human being sat, reflected the complexities of life, they would never have children. We are governed by fantasies and imaginations. That is what our fuel is. Fantasies, imaginations, dream. Most of them untested. Okay. Use your parents really, really well. Take their money. Take their money and buy yourself a car. Take their money and buy yourself nice clothes. Take their money and get yourself to school. Okay. Let them do your laundry. Let them cook for you. Let them clean for you. Be respectful. Okay. Once you accumulate enough power, then leave. And then something really interesting is going to happen. Ultimately, all of us will turn out to be like our parents. You may not like them, but you will turn out to be exactly like
I
them.
wish my children was here so they can hear this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're at a stage, all of us, at a stage where you rebel against society. Society sucks. Society this, society that. I don't like private schools. Those are for yuppie things. Then you have your own kids. Then you look at the nature and the anatomy and the quality of public education. Now, this kid came out of you. For the past 20 years, you've been looking in books, right? Reading ideas, socialism, communism, the evils of privatization of education. Saying, you know what? I'm not putting my kid in public school. Private. Okay. And so, at a certain point, going back to Danaja's question, you'll be condemned on your own understanding and realizations that you've eventually turned out to be like your parents. As long as you don't have power, take advantage of what is in your space. The moment you have power, if you still feel the same way, then leave. You don't need to like me. What you need to do, like the fact that you need to graduate. That should be your goal. As long as you like that goal, you can tolerate my nonsense. The other thing is, it really, 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 really takes us a long time to like our life. It really does. Consider the saying in I think it's the Gospel of Luke, that the birds have the trees to sit on and relax and enjoy the shade. The animals have the earth to kind of roam around and find themselves a cave and sit there and relax. Human beings, she has a job, she's looking for a job. You're married, you're looking for another human being. You have a car, you're looking for another one. We are in this position of restlessness. We're always moving. We're always questing after something. We have no idea why we're damaged in this way. But we are harassed by our own psyches, our own moods of discontent and unhappiness. If you're able to kind of find what you're good at, and not very many people can, they don't have the privilege, and not very many people have the talent to be good at anything. Some people are just designed to be in this rat race, okay, to be eaten and to eat until the day they die. Okay. If you have any talent about you, it'll take you about 25, 30, 40, 50 years to figure things out. That is, if you haven't suffered any traumas, any scars that once in a while open up and the blood just gushes out and destroys your entire life. Okay. Part of it has to do with luck. It's something we talked about yesterday in my class. I don't know why James Baldwin is the way he is. He's just magic. I don't know why Kobe Bryant was the way he was. I don't know how Gandhi was made. I don't know how Magnus Carlsen was made. I mean, these are like freaks of nature that they just find something and their soul comes out and says, that is your calling. I mean, you and I have to go through like knock on 50,000 different doors until, if you're lucky, the good door opens, you look inside and say, yes, this is what I've been looking for. But it takes us about 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So, unhappiness and stress and all those things are really part of most of our lives. You have to be profoundly lucky. I got a scholarship in tennis and soccer, so I follow the sport closely. Right now there is US Open, and the oldest guy on the men's tournament is Novak Djokovic. He's almost 40. He's married. He's got like 2, 3 kids. He's got tons of money. And when you're in a physical sport, the problem is your body has a shelf life. It has about like 15, 20 years. Less really. If you like playing football, you have like 5 good years until your body begins to crumble. I'm sure he loves his wife and I'm sure he loves his kids, but I think he loves tennis more. How many people can you find lucky enough to be so young at the age of 7 or 8 or 9 to have the financial privilege and the physical privilege, to say, I love tennis. So in the Greek world, there is this goddess by the name of Fortuna, this winged little woman. She wakes up in the morning and she says, you know what? I think I'm just going to make Lark live a happy life. And I'm going to put before her all these doors. And when she knocks on this door, the door will open and something magical will come out and she'll be happy. And then she'll look at me and say, you know what? For some strange reason, I don't like Amir Sabzevari. I'm going to place before him all these doors. And when he knocks and the doors open, all evils will come out. So I get married to be happy, I realize it's evil. I have children to be fulfilled, I realize children are nothing but headaches. I get a job thinking it's going to be an extension of my soul, I realize it's a prison system. Most of life really is about luck. But once you realize what you're good at, then comes your ability to will yourself into action. And that is tough because you have to combat sloth. Yes, Yosemite.
So you were talking a lot about individual power and the power to leave your situation or acquire enough power to I guess have autonomy in the world. And then later you on, you mentioned superiority, and I'm really curious, like, do you think that we are entitled to a certain amount of superiority when we do get to that certain level of power? If so, what kind of superiority? Can we feel entitled to
Okay.
race superiority, or?
Let me use a very simple example. You are 20. I'm about 40 years older than you are. That's 40 years of experience that you don't have. I'm also a man. Okay. Now, being a woman, you have certain insights about life that I just don't have. Okay. The only thing I can do is make sure that I don't walk into your world, because the moment I walk into your world, I find myself incompetent. I don't know what it means to be a woman. I don't know what pregnancy looks like, you know. I don't know what it means to feel objectified all the time, okay? But for me, to kind of get depressed because I'm not a woman, I need to be interested in that. And because I'm not interested, you can talk all you want about what it means to be a woman, it's not going to impact me. Now, do I feel superior to you? Absolutely. But that's not the problem. The problem is, how do I want to express it? Am I here to dominate you? In some ways, yes. But my dominating you, ultimately, it has an intention. If I'm able to silence you, if I'm able to put your thinking and reflecting and your past on pause, and if I can get you to open your ears and to listen to what I have to say, maybe you'll go home thinking about the class conversation. Maybe you'll gain a kind of different insight, perspective. Maybe that perspective will have enough juice to kind of create a dent or a crack in your belief system. Maybe that will change the course of your life. I can't come to class and say, well, I have 40 years over you, so let me just tell you you're stupid and you're dumb and you're this, you're that. That is a different aspect, you know. Yeah.
I think I'm more so curious about like there is the superiority because of social.
Yeah, hierarchy.
Hierarchy.
Sure.
Right. And I think that you express something that I really do agree with. It's just like the authority comes from, like, I respect you because you're much older, you have more life experience, but why should you feel entitled to the superiority of like arbitrary things like race and gender and maybe social class? Is it because of the privileges that come with being in those things, and therefore when you express them well, you're doing me a favor?
Okay. So there is the biological aspect of it, and there is the social construct. Okay. You go to a party, and I think we may have used this example before. Okay. There are two people in the back. You look at person number A, and their face is very symmetrical. Everything just goes well with everything else. And you look at their body, and they're like Angelina Jolie. You don't need the Bible. You don't need Jesus Christ to come down. Something about your own organism has the intelligence to say, Yasamin, she's very attractive. And then you have person number B. They look like an 18-wheeler. They look bad, they smell bad, everything about them is bad. Again, you don't need Jesus Christ to come down and tell you, well, she's really ugly. You can intuit that. Okay. The next part is, do you want to follow your instincts, your biological reasoning, or do you want to use a more evolved part of you? Okay. Now, here's the biological aspect. We have no choice but to gravitate towards that which is beautiful. Okay. Here's the thing. If you walk towards person number A, who's very, very attractive, physically, she just looks dazzling, and you say, hi, my name is Yasamin, what's your name? And she says, hello. Something happens to you. Even though she looks good on the outside, your ears intuitively says, oh, yuck. I don't want to take her out for a cup of coffee. hearing that tone of voice for the next 5 hours, you know, that's not fun. All of a sudden, that which was attractive becomes unattractive. Okay. But let's say that there is nothing wrong with her. But you're aware enough and reflective enough to say, okay, Yasamin, listen, it's not good to be biased. Biology created someone attractive. DNA created someone who's not so attractive. Be a bit more reflective. And by that, I mean the following, let me say. Let's say you were baptized when you were 2. And you've been a Bible thumper for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And one of the most important messages of the Gospels is the kingdom of God lives inside you. In fact, it lives inside everyone. And then you look at the person number A and person number B, and you say, you know what? Looks are good, they're interesting, they're also important, but I'm looking for the interior. So now you go on your interview quest. You ask some questions from person number A, Angelina Jolie, and you begin to ask questions from Snoop Dogg, who's not very attractive. Okay, and you realize that Snoop Dogg has this light about him that Angelina doesn't. He dazzles your soul, even though you want to vomit every time you look at him, right? Angelina Jolie, she inspires you, but the moment she opens her mouth, you want to vomit. So it really depends on the power of your intellect and how your intellect has the power to contaminate your intuition and your instinctual abilities. Can I tell you a story? I was teaching at Sierra College many decades ago, and it was a summertime. I was washing cars, and then in the evening I would go and teach my class. It was a religion class. And Roseville, Rockland area, temperature gets to about 110, 15, 20, 30, 40. It's like the desert. Okay. This young woman walks in with a 2-piece bikini. And this is like 1999, 2-piece bikini. And it wasn't just like a regular, normal bikini that covers certain areas. It was like you go to Home Depot and you buy 50 feet of rope, She would just cover with a rope. That's what it is. Okay. And I'm sitting back saying, what the hell is this? You shouldn't be dressed like this. And so the first day of class, you want to leave a good impression, not only on the student body, but also on your instructor. And then she raises her hand again and again and again, and she begins to ask questions. She was only 19, but she was an intellectual powerhouse. And because of the way she spoke, and because of the way she expressed herself and ideas, it forced you to always look at her face, not the rest of her body. Sometimes you encounter certain people who have a tremendous amount of power that they override another is instinctual, and they drive you towards something that you can't really explain or describe. Yeah. There was an interview with Elon Musk some time ago, and there is something to be said about feeling superior and being superior to other people, where he said that, I don't think anyone would enjoy living in my mind. It's a tornado all the time. Because you're always trying to figure out how you could better yourself. I mean, it's like living with an alcoholic whom you love desperately and intensely. You can't sleep at night, not because you want to leave him, but because you want to see if there is a way you can heal this man. Being superior is being very, very lonely. I mean, most of the people we talk about in this class, whether it's Socrates or Nietzsche or Jesus Christ or Malcolm X, these are profoundly lonely people. And in loneliness, they become profoundly creative, but also depressed. Yeah, anyone else? Yeah, tell me.
This goes back to the statement you made, answering the large question, you mentioned that kids turn out, they realize that they're just like their parents. I was listening to a podcast a few years ago, and they were interviewing two brothers, and the interviewer was discussing their father's addiction, and their father was an alcoholic, and so the interviewer asked one son, "Why do you drink?" He said, "I drank because my father drank." He asked the other son, "Why don't you drink?" He said, "I don't drink because my father drank."
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting how kids, one child, same household, addiction is where he landed because
Yeah.
his father drank.
Yeah.
And then this other young man says, "I don't want anything to do with alcohol."
Yeah.
Because his father drank.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how they were in the same household, ate the same food, raised by the same person, but one went one way.
Yeah. Yeah, there was this famous story about this professor who teaches sociology in University of Washington. His brother is serving life in prison. He's a professor. He's a professor.
Really?
Yeah, go figure. I mean, that's just. We all try to control life as much as possible. We are governed by a software that we don't really understand, and it's given to us at the moment of your birth. Some people are born to be fire. They are always chaotic. They're creative, but most often destructive. They're hot-tempered. They're good for 2 days. They destroy things for the next 2 weeks. There are some people who are peacemakers. They're like earth. You give them shit, they say thank you. You give them flowers, they say thank you. They have a very positive attitude towards life. And if you have been made of fire from the moment that you came out of your mother, and it happens just before you're born, really. That's your software. You can make minor adjustments, but if you're made of fire, you can't become water. You could have a tiny little footnote where once in a while you become water, but your chief feature is just being like fire, Some people are just like water. They're very passive. Some people are just made of air. They're very detached. They're solitary. They can love deeply at the same time. They can walk away easily. And there are certain things that you can control. There are certain things you can't control. I mean, even if you were to consider the life story of Malcolm X, I mean, how many of us can survive after watching our father being lynched, hanged? Not very many. How many of us will prosper after having served like a good amount of time in prison? How many of us, being a person of color, for example, can go through very, very difficult times and recover from it and become a prophet for our community and ultimately the world? Not very many of us, And there is this coveted nature to us. You lust after things that are beautiful. Malcolm X is beautiful. Socrates is beautiful. And I fancy them. I want to become like them. And I read their books, and I read many books like it. Then I come to class. I mean, look, I remember my own teacher when I was 18 and a half. He gave me the Dialogues of Plato in Persian, 5 volumes. And I said, man, this is amazing stuff. I said, you know what? I'm going to be like Socrates. I never intended on, going to school and getting degrees and teaching, but I wasn't really good for anything else. So out of desperation, I just went to school, got degrees, and you walk into class. And you have no idea how you're going to be. But I opened my mouth and I realized I'm not Socrates. I just have the desire to be like Socrates. To become like Socrates, fortuna. You just have to be born in a certain way. You have to have certain restlessness about you. You have to have certain curiosities about you. You can't manufacture certain things. It's just not possible.
What about people who desire to be like other people and they mimic them until they kind of get their own recipe or their own style of doing something, like a preacher? People will desire to be like, let's say, Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, and they do things that resemble them until they can create their own language.
So there is a guy in the Persian world, his name is Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi Balkhi, i.e. Rumi, who's gained a good amount of popularity in the past 2, 3, 4, 5 decades in the West, especially America, through Coleman Barks, who doesn't even speak the language, the Persian language, but translates his works nevertheless. He has this wonderful saying that there is one real and 1,000 counterfeits. You get one Jesus Christ and then you get 1,000,000 preachers. And it's just a matter of time before the preachers are found to be counterfeit. Joel Osteen, he speaks really well. He's very animated. He has this southernness to him, very inviting. He has this charm. You know, it's just a matter of time before people come to realize he's just a piece of shit. Now, it doesn't mean that he doesn't speak well. He does. You know. So counterfeits are, eventually they're caught. You know. So you can mimic to be like MLK, but eventually through certain episodes, they'll just realize, yeah, you look like him, talk like him, you're just not him. Yeah. Yeah, Monique. Oui. That feels so good.
Oh my God, I'm having a summer right now.
What gives us our power to fly? That's good.
Imagine you are a piece of a shit of a human being. And by that, I mean you smoke, you drink, you do porn, you hang out with your friends, and you talk about stupid things. Today, as you're driving home, you see 5 police officers. They all happen to be white or black or blue. These days, it really doesn't matter anymore. And there is this young kid, maybe white kid, maybe black kid, maybe brown kid, just getting beaten up. Now, you see something, but that by itself is not enough. You see something and it inspires curiosity. What the hell is happening? That curiosity, within a matter of maybe a couple of seconds, turns into anger. And that anger enrages you. As you're driving home, you say, what the fuck? Do you really need like 5 police officers with batons beating this 18-year-old kid who's like a mouse, tiny little thing? And then you go home. And then you pick up some books off of your shelf. Politics, society, the social structure. And you realize that this is more just a moment of inspiration. You've been infected by what you witnessed. And it has robbed you of sleep. You don't want to talk to your friends. You don't want to text your friends. You don't want to look at your phone. You don't want to watch TV. All you want to do is just swim in ideas that you find in books. Days pass and you find yourself more enveloped in these books and ideas. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And one day you just get up, you look at your phone and you delete all of your contacts. And you drop your major in, say, economics. Not economics. You drop your major in, say, computer science. And you say, you know what, I'm going to do history, psychology, and economics. Okay. And then you become a very solitary animal. You come to school with 10 books. During your free time, you sit somewhere and you read. And you realize that all of a sudden, for the first time in your life, your mind is taking you to places that your feet can't. That you're beginning to ask questions you never did. And you like yourself. It's painful. Because you realize that you want to create an environment where there is fairness and justice and equality, but you're just a young lad. You know, you don't really have the power to create any social change. And that frustrates you, annoys you, you know. And you realize, let's just say your husband reading a book about Karl Marx, but your husband is just reading it. You are feeling it. And you sit with your husband and say, well, you know, Karl Marx said A, B, C, D. And he says, well, let me tell you what exactly he means. And you say, fuck, I know what he says. All I'm telling you that the idea is burning me from the inside. You're just like playing with these ideas. These ideas are no longer a toy for me. And all of a sudden there is this gap between you and your husband now. Okay. And so the more pain injected inside you, the loftier, the more reflective, the more insightful you'll become. So the answer to your question is pain. But You need to do something with pain. If there is pain and you have no tools to combat pain, if you have no tools to make it more creative, to make something from it, then pain takes you to sadness. Sadness takes you to sorrow. Sorrow turns you profoundly lonely. And if you're not careful, you'll get depressed. If you're not careful, you'll get chronically depressed. And then you'll be unreachable. And yet the entire world down here will taste nothing for you, will smell like nothing for you. You'll have no interest in it. Now, there is this beautiful story that we have from the Greek world. Before I tell you the story, what time is it? Oh yeah, we don't have time. And to be honest, Avi, I forgot your question. Can you repeat it?
What gives you power?
Oh, wings. Yeah. Can I just, because I don't have time for the other story, I'll give you a cheesy one. Is that okay? Let's say you're in this great relationship. I mean, by great, I mean, you guys have a house and a car and a job and 5, 6, 10 kids, and you got great parents. There's nothing wrong with your life. But it's just life. And you've forgotten how you met your companion, how he or she used to write poetry for you, how Valentine's really meant something, how sex meant something, conversations meant something. Now it's just, you're in a comfort zone, and that's a great place to be. And you go to a gathering or a party, or you take a class, or whatever the case may be, and someone looks at you and you feel some tingles, something you haven't felt for a long time. And you say, man, that feels really good. I mean, my husband or my wife gives me a lot of attention, but usually when they give me attention, I don't really feel anything. I just like it. This person gives me attention, and I'm about to pee my pants. And so they keep looking at you, and they eventually come up and talk to you. And it's a dance that all of us play, which is you're flirtatious. First, it's through the eyes, hey, Adrian. Then, it's like your voice happens to be very aggressive. Hey, how you doing? And now it says, hey, how are you? What's going on? And so we become flirtatious in all sorts of weird ways. And you forget that you're married, you forget that you got kids. And even though it's inappropriate, you text this person saying, thank you. It was good to meet you. And this poor unintelligent fellow thinks that it's just a simple couple of words, but no, he is set your life on fire, or she. And then time passes, and you realize that every time you look at your companion, you want to vomit, or you have diarrhea. And then one day you go home and you say, I'm leaving you. What the hell? Yeah. Why? And it doesn't mean that you're going to go with this guy or this gal. It just means that this particular emotion brought you to life. And when you go home, your home environment, there's nothing wrong with it, but there are no wings in there. And even if you had wings, you can't really fly. And even if you were to fly, people would punish you and condemn your kids, your husband, your wife, your parents. So you just clip your wings by the door, you put them by the door side and just go in and just... But you go in now, and what you have now is conscience. There's a part of you that remembers, knows how it feels to be alive and how it felt to fly up there. And as you're washing dishes and you're having sex with your companion, as you're playing with the kids, you just know and feel, and it's just right there. You have wings, what are you doing? And now the conflict begins. And then the task is, will you choose a world that's unknown? or will you choose a world that's known to you? And that's a very, very, very difficult place to be. And it's a place that I don't recommend for anyone to be in. Because if you have a life, it's always dangerous. And by having a life, I mean, it's my sister's son, Arman. He is in Ohio doing dental school. He's 24, 25. He'll be done in a couple of years. He's at a different stage in his life, you know. So he just came from Ohio to visit us, and he came to this class, and you were there when he came back. And so my sister calls and says, Amir, Arman wants to come to your class again. Can you tell him not to? Why? Because he's asking questions. He wants to drop dentistry and go into like the social sciences, i.e. philosophy or religious studies. And this guy is so close. And we are immigrants. You know, immigrants don't major in the arts because we know the difficulties and complexities of life and difficulties of money and poverty and all those things. So when you look at Asians, when you look at Middle Easterners and Indians, they really go into computer science and want to be doctors and engineers. Part of it is cultural. The other is, you know, as a people, you've come to understand the difficulties of life. And so you don't choose to play the piano. You choose to be a surgeon, not because you love people, but because you love money. And that money pays for your parents, pays for your kids, pays for your relatives, pays for your community. And so the point I'm trying to make is, in as much as I think all of us covet a life that's profoundly exotic, like an Elon Musk or a Magnus Carlsen or a Malcolm X, the truth is that the inner world of these people are, they live in isolation. And it's a very traumatic existence. Malcolm X's life is traumatic. Jesus' life is traumatic, even though we look at these literature, these books, and we say, wow, this is a beautiful bumper sticker. You know, when this guy is asked a question and he regenerates the story, don't just look at the story. This is a guy who left his parents at the age of 12. This is a guy who saw his father being hanged. You know, in his words live blood, live pain, lives confusion, annoyance, irritation. You know, that's a lot of stuff that these bumper stickers have. We only take it as a bumper sticker. So in as much as all of us in this class desire to fly, it is profoundly dangerous. Now, having said that, one of the reasons that for the longest time in our human history, we've had cults is because, good cults, I'm not talking about today, because people like the Buddha, like Socrates, like Aristotle, like some of the ones in India, they all knew the dangerousness of ideas. They all knew that deep down, all human beings desire to fly. But just because you desire to fly, it doesn't mean it's good for you. Sometimes a desire should simply remain a desire without it ever becoming applicable. You know? So, having said all of that, it's good to see all of you. Have a nice weekend. Tell your parents I said hello. See you next week, Monday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.